My twin sister collapsed on my doorstep at midnight, bleeding and terrified. Her husband was coming for her, planning to lock her away forever to steal her inheritance. He thought he was hunting a weak, frightened woman. He had no idea he was about to face me instead. I am Vivian Banks, a retired federal judge, and I do not get mad. I get justice. Before we continue this story, please leave a comment telling us where you are watching from and subscribe to Never Too Old channel. We are creating a community of people who know that our best chapters can happen at any age. Now back to the story. The rain was hammering against the floor-to-ceiling glass of my Atlanta penthouse, but inside, everything was silent. That is how I like it. At 68 years old, I have earned my peace. I poured myself a glass of Merlot and watched the lightning split the sky over the city I used to help run. I am Vivian Banks. People in this town know that name. They know not to cross it. But that night, the intercom did not buzz. The phone did not ring. There was just a frantic, desperate pounding directly on my front door. My building has doormen. It has security layers. No one just knocks on my door unless they are running for their life. I set my wine glass down on the marble counter and walked to the foyer. When I pulled the heavy door open, my heart stopped. Standing there shivering in a puddle of rainwater was my own face, or the face I used to have before life hardened me. It was Valerie, my twin sister. We had not spoken in 3 years, not since she married Gavin, that smooth-talking investment broker I warned her about. But the woman standing before me was not the vibrant piano teacher I remembered. Her lip was split. Her left eye was swollen shut, turning a sickening shade of purple. She was clutching a wet, muddy bundle against her chest like a shield. I looked closer. It was our mother's antique porcelain doll, the only thing Valerie had insisted on keeping when Mama passed. "Vivian," she whispered, and her voice was broken glass. "He is going to kill me." I pulled her inside immediately, disregarding the water dripping onto my Persian rugs. My hands, usually steady as a surgeon's, were trembling as I locked the deadbolt. I guided her to the velvet sofa, grabbing a cashmere throw to wrap around her shaking shoulders. Her skin was ice cold. I ran into the bathroom, grabbed the first aid kit, and came back to clean the blood from her face. As I dabbed at the cut on her lip, the rage started to boil in my gut. It was not a hot, fiery anger. It was the cold, calculated fury I used to feel when I sentenced a predator to life without parole. "Gavin did this?" I asked, my voice dangerously low. Valerie nodded, flinching as if she expected me to hit her too. "He wants the land in Georgia, Vivian. The property Daddy left us. He has gambling debts, huge ones. He tried to make me sign the power of attorney yesterday. When I refused, she choked on a sob, clutching the doll tighter. He threw me down the stairs. He told the neighbors I fell. He told them I am losing my mind." I stopped cleaning her wound and looked her in the eye. "Losing your mind. He has a plan, Vivian. He called a doctor, one of his friends. They are coming tomorrow morning at 8 o'clock. He is going to have me committed. He says I am a danger to myself. Once I am locked away, he gets control of everything. My house, my accounts, Daddy's land." I looked at the clock on the wall. It was just past midnight. We had 8 hours. Valerie grabbed my wrist, her grip surprisingly strong. "I cannot go back there, Vivian. If I go back, I will never see the sun again." Then her eyes rolled back, and she slumped forward into my arms, fainting from exhaustion and terror. I held my sister, feeling her shallow breathing against my chest. I looked at her battered face, so identical to my own, and then I looked at my reflection in the dark window. Gavin wanted a crazy, helpless old woman he could manipulate. Fine, I would give him one. But he was about to learn that you should never judge a book by its cover, especially when that book is a retired judge who knows exactly how to get away with murder. My son Marcus arrived 20 minutes later. He took one look at his aunt lying on my velvet sofa, battered and broken, and the color drained from his face. Marcus is 25, a cybersecurity specialist who usually hides behind a computer screen, but tonight his hands were clenched into fists. "Who did this?" he demanded, his voice shaking. "Gavin," I said simply. My voice was calm, but it was the calm before a hurricane. I walked to the foyer mirror while Marcus checked Valerie's pulse. I stared at my reflection. Same high cheekbones, same silver-streaked hair we both refused to dye, same nose. But where Valerie's eyes held fear, mine held judgment. Where her posture was slumped in defeat, mine was rigid with authority. We were identical on the outside, but inside we were different species. I turned to my son. "Marcus, I need you to stay here and watch her. Call Dr. Evans. Tell him it is off the books. I am going to Gavin's." Marcus stepped in front of me, blocking the door. "Mom, no. That man is dangerous. You cannot go over there and fight him." "I am not going to fight him," I said, unfastening my diamond earrings and dropping them onto the console table. "I am going to become her." Marcus stared at me like I had lost my mind. I explained the plan. Gavin was expecting a broken, submissive wife to return home or be dragged home. If Valerie didn't show up, he would run, or he would find her and finish the job. But if she returned compliant and ready to sign his papers, he would let his guard down. I went into the guest room and stripped off my silk robe. I put on Valerie's clothes. They were cheap polyester things that smelled like lavender and sadness. I took off my Cartier watch, my gold rings, everything that screamed Vivian Banks. I popped in a pair of tinted contact lenses to mask the slight difference in our eye color. When I walked back out, Marcus gasped. It was terrifying. I looked exactly like the woman sleeping on the couch. "Wire me up," I told him. Marcus hesitated, then pulled a tiny listening device from his bag. He taped it underneath the collar of the blouse. "I will be listening to every word, Mom," he said. "If he touches you, if he even raises his hand, I am calling the police." I touched my son's cheek. If he raises a hand to me, he is going to wish the police were the only thing he had to worry about. I took Valerie's car keys. Her old sedan was parked downstairs. The rain had slowed to a drizzle, but the streets of Atlanta were slick and dark. I sat in the driver's seat and gripped the steering wheel until my knuckles turned white. My heart was hammering a slow, steady rhythm of war drums. I was driving into the lion's den armed with nothing but my wits and a wire. Gavin is expecting a lamb to walk through that door tomorrow morning, a scared, weak woman he can bully into an asylum. He has no idea that the woman walking up his driveway is not a lamb. He is about to open his door to a wolf. I pulled Valerie's old sedan into the driveway of the colonial mansion that Gavin had bought with her inheritance money. It looked less like a home and more like a mausoleum in the pale moonlight. I took a deep breath, channeling every ounce of fear I had seen in my sister's eyes earlier, replacing my natural steel backbone with her trembling hesitation. I had to sell this performance, at least for the first 5 minutes. The front door was unlocked, which was a bad sign. I stepped into the foyer and the smell hit me instantly. It was a mix of expensive scotch and stale aggression. Gavin was waiting in the living room, sitting in the dark like a spider in its web. He stood up as soon as the door clicked shut, swaying slightly on his feet. "Where have you been?" he slurred, stumbling toward me. He looked disheveled, handsome in a slimy way, but currently a wreck. "I told you never to leave this house without my permission." I made myself shrink inward, hunching my shoulders the way Valerie did. "I just went for a drive, Gavin," I whispered, testing my voice. It sounded weak and terrified. "Perfect. A drive," he roared, lunging toward me. "You are lying. You went to see that witch sister of yours, didn't you?" He raised his hand. It was a reflex for him, a casual brutality that made my blood run cold. In that split second, I forgot I was supposed to be the victim. I forgot the plan. All I saw was a man about to strike a woman, and Judge Vivian Banks does not tolerate contempt of court. As his hand came down, I did not flinch. I stepped in. My left hand shot up, intercepting his wrist mid-air. I used his own momentum against him, twisting his arm behind his back and driving his face into the plaster wall with a sickening thud. It was a move a federal bailiff had taught me 20 years ago, and muscle memory took over. Gavin screamed more in shock than pain, though I was definitely hurting him. "What the hell, get off me!" I leaned close to his ear, my voice dropping an octave, losing the tremble entirely. "Listen to me, you drunk piece of garbage. If you ever raise a hand to me again, you will be eating your meals through a straw. Do you understand me?" I shoved him away. He stumbled back, clutching his wrist, staring at me with wide, terrified eyes. He looked at me like he was seeing a ghost or a monster. "Valerie," he stammered, backing away until his legs hit the sofa. "What is wrong with you? You are crazy." "I am tired, Gavin," I said, smoothing my cheap polyester blouse as if nothing had happened. "I am going to bed." I left him standing there, mouth open, trying to process how his punching bag had just turned into a brick wall. I walked up the stairs, my heart pounding, not from fear, but from adrenaline. I found the master bedroom at the end of the hall. It was cold inside, too cold. I went to the window to close the drapes and stopped. There were 4-inch industrial nails driven into the sash. The window was sealed shut. I checked the other one. Same thing. This was not a bedroom. It was a holding cell. Then I saw it. A faint red light blinked in the corner of the ceiling. I looked up. A camera lens, black and unblinking, was pointed directly at the bed. He was recording everything, waiting for a moment of weakness to use as evidence for his asylum application. I walked right up to the lens, staring into the glass eye until I saw my own reflection. I did not see Valerie anymore. I saw the judge. I smiled a cold, hard smile that belonged entirely to Vivian. "Game on, darling," I whispered. The sun was barely up when Gavin stumbled into the kitchen. He looked terrible, eyes bloodshot and skin pale from the night before, but his arrogance was fully intact. He reached into his pocket and tossed a prescription bottle onto the granite countertop. It skid across the cold surface and stopped right in front of my coffee mug. "Take them," he ordered, not even looking at me as he poured himself a glass of orange juice. "You know how you get when you miss a dose, Valerie. Paranoid. Crazy." I picked up the bottle. The label said lorazepam, a standard anti-anxiety medication. But the pills inside were the wrong shape, slightly too thick, and a shade of blue that looked off. My son Marcus whispered in my earpiece, his voice crisp and clear. "Mom, do not swallow that. I ran a spectroanalysis on the sample you swiped last night. That is not lorazepam. It is a high-dose hallucinogen mixed with sedatives. It is designed to make you lose your mind within an hour." I knew it. He was not just gaslighting my sister. He was chemically lobotomizing her. I opened the bottle and shook 2 pills into my hand. I threw them into my mouth, taking a large gulp of water. But I did not swallow. I slid the pills between my cheek and gum, a trick I learned from a defendant trying to smuggle contraband into my courtroom 20 years ago. I swallowed the water loudly. "Happy?" I asked, keeping my face neutral. Gavin sneered, satisfied with his control. "Thrilled. Now make me breakfast. Eggs over easy. And do not burn the toast this time." He sat down at the head of the table and opened his newspaper, dismissing me like I was the hired help. He expected Valerie to scurry to the stove to apologize for existing to serve him. He expected the fear. I walked over to the refrigerator and took out the carton of eggs. I pulled out 3, holding them in my hand. I walked up to the table where he was reading. He did not even look up until my shadow fell over his paper. "What are you waiting for?" he snapped, rattling the pages. "Go cook." I looked at him, letting the silence stretch until he was forced to make eye contact. Then I opened my hand. The eggs fell. They hit his expensive china plate with a wet, heavy crunch. Yolks exploded, splattering across his newspaper, his silk tie, and his lap. He jumped up his chair, scraping violently against the floor. "What the hell is wrong with you?" "Make it yourself," I said. My voice was calm, steady, and completely devoid of the trembling fear he was used to. "I am not your servant, Gavin. And I am done cooking for a man who is trying to poison me." He stood there, egg yolk dripping from his shirt, his face turning a dangerous shade of purple. He opened his mouth to scream, to threaten, maybe to try and hit me again. But before he could get a word out, the doorbell rang. The sound froze him. He looked toward the foyer, and then a slow, cruel smile spread across his face. He wiped the egg from his chin with the back of his hand and looked at me with eyes full of malice. "You think you are tough today, Valerie. You think you can fight back. That is Dr. Roberts. He is here early." Gavin leaned across the table, ignoring the mess, his voice dropping to a whisper that was meant to be a death sentence. "Get your bag. You are not going to be making breakfast here anymore. You are going to the asylum." Dr. Roberts walked into the living room with the swagger of a man who was used to getting paid to look the other way. He was carrying a leather briefcase and wearing a suit that cost more than my sister's car. Gavin was right behind him, smirking like the cat that ate the canary. "Good morning, Valerie," Dr. Roberts said, sitting opposite me and clicking a gold pen. "Gavin tells me you have been feeling unwell, confused, perhaps hearing things that aren't there." I sat perfectly still, hands folded in my lap. I did not blink. "I am feeling perfectly fine, doctor. But I am curious. Did you file the mandatory intent to examine with the state board before coming here this morning? His pen stopped moving. Excuse me. Under Georgia State Law Code 37-3. I said, my voice crisp and authoritative, the voice that used to make defense attorneys stutter, an involuntary commitment. Evaluation requires a court order or an emergency affidavit signed by a law enforcement officer. I do not see a badge, doctor, and I certainly do not see a judge's signature. Gavin stepped forward, his face flushing. She is delusional, Roberts. Just listen to her. She thinks she is a lawyer now. Write the prescription. Roberts looked at Gavin, then back at me. He looked unsure. Valerie, I am just here to help. If you are experiencing paranoia. Paranoia is an irrational fear. Doctor, I cut him off. My fear is based on the fact that you are about to commit a felony. Conspiracy to commit medical fraud, false imprisonment. And let us not forget the HIPAA violations involved in discussing my medical history with my husband without my written consent. I leaned forward. Roberts pulled back as if I were radioactive. I remember a case from 1998. I continued locking eyes with him. State versus Anderson. A psychiatrist lost his license and spent 5 years in federal prison for signing commitment papers for a wealthy husband who wanted to get rid of his wife. The similarities are striking, do you not think? Sweat broke out on Robert's forehead. He looked at Gavin. You said she was catatonic. You said she was incoherent. She is, Gavin yelled. She is faking it. Just sign the paper. I am not signing anything, Roberts said, standing up so fast his chair fell over. He shoved his papers back into his briefcase. I have a practice to protect. This woman is as sharp as a tack, Gavin. She knows the statutes better than I do. I am leaving. You can't leave, Gavin grabbed the doctor's arm. I paid you. Keep the money. Roberts shook him off and practically ran for the front door. Do not call me again. The door slammed shut, and the silence that followed was heavy and dangerous. Gavin stood there, his chest heaving, his hands balling into fists. He looked at me, and for the first time, the mask of the charming husband was completely gone. There was only the predator, cornered and vicious. He screamed a raw animal sound of frustration and swept his arm across the mantel. A Ming vase, one of the few things of value left in the house, shattered against the fireplace bricks. Shards of blue and white porcelain skittered across the floor. He pulled his phone from his pocket, his fingers shaking with rage as he dialed. He didn't take his eyes off me. Plan A is dead, he hissed into the phone. The doctor ran. This woman, she is acting strange. She knows things she shouldn't know. You need to get here. Now. We are going to have to do this the hard way. Jessica arrived 20 minutes later, looking like she had just stepped out of a fashion magazine and into my nightmare. She was younger than I expected, maybe 30, with perfectly highlighted blonde hair and a white designer suit that probably cost more than the average American mortgage payment. She did not knock. She just walked in as if she already lived there, which I suspected was part of the plan. Gavin was waiting by the door, his anger replaced by a slick, desperate charm. Valerie, this is Jessica, he said, gesturing to her. She is an attorney. She is here to help us sort out some paperwork since Dr. Roberts had to leave. Jessica smiled, but it did not reach her eyes. Her eyes were cold, calculating, and fixed on me like a vulture eyeing a dying rabbit. Hello, Valerie, she said, her voice dripping with fake sympathy. Gavin tells me you have been under a lot of stress lately. We just want to make things easier for you. She sat down on the sofa next to me, placing a leather portfolio on the coffee table. She pulled out a thick document and a heavy fountain pen. This is a standard power of attorney, she explained, speaking slowly, as if I were a child or an idiot. It just gives Gavin the ability to manage your finances and make decisions while you get better. It is a safety net, honey. That is all. I looked at the document. It was not a safety net. It was a trap. It granted Gavin full control over my sister's assets, her property, and her medical care. It was the legal equivalent of handing him a loaded gun. I reached for the document, my hand trembling with a practiced frailty. I pretended to read the first page, letting my eyes lose focus. It seems like a lot, I whispered, my voice quavering. It is just standard legal language, Jessica said, leaning in closer. She smelled of expensive perfume and entitlement. Trust us, Valerie. You are not well. You are confused. Let Gavin take this burden off your shoulders. Just sign right there at the bottom." She tapped the signature line with a manicured fingernail. I looked at Gavin. He was watching me with hungry eyes, waiting for the moment he would own everything. I looked at Jessica, the woman helping him destroy my sister for a cut of the profits. I picked up the pen in my right hand. With my left, I reached for the mug of steaming hot black coffee sitting on the table. "I do want to help," I said, my voice soft. "I want to do the right thing." I brought the pen to the paper. Jessica leaned in eagerly, her guard completely down. I let my hand spasm violently. The mug flew from my grip. "Oops," I said flatly. 16 ounces of scalding coffee hit Jessica squarely in the chest, soaking instantly into her pristine white jacket and running down to her skirt. She shrieked a high-pitched sound of pure shock and pain, jumping up and knocking the table over. "You stupid old witch!" she screamed, her professional mask disintegrating instantly. "Look what you did. This is a $2,000 suit, you clumsy idiot." I sat back and watched the chaos. "Oh dear," I said without a shred of remorse. "I guess my nerves are just shot today." Gavin practically dragged the shrieking Jessica out the front door, muttering apologies and promises to buy her a whole new wardrobe. As soon as his taillights vanished down the driveway, I dropped the act. The trembling old lady vanished, and Judge Banks stepped back into the room. I had maybe 40 minutes before he got back. I needed to know exactly why he was so desperate to lock my sister away. I headed straight for his home office. The door was locked, of course, a heavy oak slab with a deadbolt that screamed, "Keep out." But I spent 30 years watching bailiffs handle evidence lockers, and I picked up a trick or two. I pulled a bobby pin from my wig, stripped the rubber tip with my teeth, and slid it into the keyhole. It took me less than 30 seconds. The lock clicked, a satisfying sound that echoed in the empty hallway. Inside, the room smelled of stale cigar smoke and fear. It was a chaotic mess of papers and empty Scotch bottles. I went straight for the desk. The top drawers were locked too, but a heavy letter opener took care of that wood like it was butter. I started digging. Past the unpaid utility bills, past the angry letters from the country club. And then I found it, a thick manila envelope taped to the underside of the bottom drawer. I opened it, and my blood ran cold. It was not just gambling debts. It was a death warrant. Gavin owed $500,000 to a loan shark outfit I recognized from my days on the bench. These people did not send overdue notices, they sent body bags. Under the debt ledger was a mortgage application. I scanned it. He had forged Valerie's signature perfectly, taking out a massive second mortgage on the estate. The date was tomorrow. He was not just trying to commit her. He needed her out of the way so the bank would not ask why the homeowner looked confused at the closing. He was selling her life to save his own skin. I snapped photos of every page with the burner phone Marcus had slipped me. "Got you," I whispered. I had the motive. I had the proof. I was just about to close the drawer when the sound of gravel crunching outside froze me. He was back early. I moved to the window, peering through the heavy velvet curtains. Gavin's car screeched to a halt in front of the house, but he did not get out alone. 2 men climbed out of the back seat. They were massive, wearing cheap leather jackets that bulged at the waist. I knew that look. I knew exactly what was hiding under those jackets. Gavin looked terrified, gesturing toward the house, pleading with them. One of the men shoved him forward. They were not here for tea. Gavin was bringing in the muscle. He was done with doctors and lawyers. He was going to force his wife to sign those papers, even if he had to break her fingers to do it. I slipped the phone into my pocket and smoothed my skirt. I did not have time to hide. I walked out of the office and stood at the top of the stairs waiting. If they wanted a fight, they were certainly going to get one. The 2 men stomped into the house, bringing the cold night air with them. They looked like stereotypical thugs, heavy-set with mean eyes, and the kind of swagger that came from intimidating people who couldn't fight back. Gavin was practically vibrating with nervous energy behind them. "This is my wife," he said, pointing a shaking finger at me as I descended the stairs. "She is confused. She doesn't know what she is doing. Just make her sign the papers." The larger of the 2 men, a bald brute with a scar running through his eyebrow, stepped forward. He cracked his knuckles, a sound like dry wood snapping. "Listen, lady," he growled. "We can do this the easy way or the hard way. the hard. Sign the paper and nobody gets hurt. I stopped on the bottom step and looked him dead in the eye. I didn't flinch. I didn't tremble. I just smiled. The easy way, I repeated, my voice calm and conversational. Is the easy way similar to what happened in 1999, Mr. Kowalski? Or should I call you by your street name, Hammer? The man froze. His eyes widened. How do you know that name? My son Marcus was whispering in my ear, his voice a steady stream of data. Michael Kowalski, 2 counts of aggravated assault, 1 count of extortion, paroled 3 months ago, still on probation. If he is caught within 500 feet of a felony, he goes back for 10 years. I took a step closer to him. You are still on parole, aren't you, Michael? Your parole officer, Mr. Henderson, would be very interested to know you are here tonight, threatening an elderly woman. That is a direct violation. 10 years minimum. No early release this time. I turned to the other man, a skinny guy with a nervous twitch. And you must be David Miller. Petty theft. Grand larceny. You have a warrant out in Florida for skipping bail. The skinny guy took a step back, looking at his partner. Mike, how does she know this? Is she a cop? I am not a cop, I said, my voice dropping to a whisper. I am much worse. I am a federal judge. And right now my team is listening to every word you say. I tapped my ear. Run, I said, before the sirens start. They didn't wait to hear more. They turned and bolted out the door, almost knocking Gavin over in their haste. The sound of their car peeling out of the driveway was the sweetest music I had heard all night. Gavin stood there alone in the hallway, staring at the open door, then at me. His face was pale, his hands trembling. Who are you? He whispered. You aren't Valerie. Valerie doesn't know those things. I tilted my head, looking at him with feigned concern. Gavin, honey, are you feeling all right? You brought those men here. You told them those things. Don't you remember? I didn't, he stammered, backing away. You are confused, dear, I said, walking past him into the kitchen. Maybe you should lie down. You seem to be forgetting a lot of things lately. I started moving things, just small things at first. I shifted the vase on the table 2 inches to the left. I turned the picture frames on the mantel face down. I took his keys off the hook and put them in the refrigerator. Gavin watched me, his eyes darting around the room, his grip on reality starting to slip. What are you doing? That vase. It was not there before. Wasn't it? I asked, smiling. Are you sure, Gavin? Are you sure about anything anymore? The house was silent, except for the clinking of ice against crystal and the heavy, uneven breathing of a man watching his life implode. It was 2 a.m. I found Gavin in the library, slumped in his leather armchair, with a half-empty bottle of scotch on the side table. The room was dark, illuminated only by the moonlight filtering through the French doors I had unlocked earlier. I stood in the shadows near the bookshelf watching him. He looked pathetic. The arrogance was gone, washed away by fear and alcohol. He was muttering to himself, arguing with ghosts. Why won't she just sign? He whispered, taking a long pull from his glass. Just sign the damn papers, Valerie. It is so simple. I took a step forward, letting the floorboard creak. Gavin jerked his head up, squinting into the darkness. Valerie, he slurred. Is that you? Stop hiding. Stop moving my things. I stayed in the shadows, my voice soft but carrying a deliberate edge. Did you ever love me, Gavin? Or was it always just about the money? He laughed, a harsh, ugly sound that grated on my nerves. Love. Do not be stupid. You were a Mark Valerie. A sad, lonely old woman with the inheritance she did not know how to spend. I did you a favor marrying you. I touched the digital recorder pen tucked into the breast pocket of my blouse, ensuring it was running. Tell me the truth, Gavin. Why do you need the money so badly? He threw his glass against the fireplace, shattering it. Because they are going to kill me, you idiot. The loan sharks. I owe them $500,000. I lost it all. The stocks, the savings, everything. I need to sell your land to pay them back before they cut my fingers off one by one. He stood up, swaying heavily, bracing himself against the desk. I never loved you. He spat the words out like venom. I hated waking up next to your wrinkly face every morning. I hated your voice. I hated your pathetic little piano lessons. I was just waiting for you to die, but you are taking too long, so I have to speed things up. Got you, I thought. Confession, motive, intent. It was all there, recorded in high-definition audio. I stepped out of the shadows into the pool of moonlight. My face was calm, my posture straight. I was not the trembling wife anymore. I was the executioner. You really are a piece of work, Gavin, I said, my voice dropping its facade, completely returning to the steel tone of Judge Banks. Gavin blinked, trying to focus on me. He squinted, leaning forward. Something in his drunken brain was trying to make connections. He looked at my face, really looked at it. Then his eyes dropped to my chest. In the darkness, the tiny red recording light on the pen in my pocket pulsed once. A small, rhythmic heartbeat of evidence. Gavin saw it. The realization hit him like a bucket of ice water. He stiffened. The drunkenness seemed to evaporate, replaced by a sharp, terrifying clarity. He looked from the light back up to my eyes. Valerie would never stand like that. Valerie would never look at him with that kind of cold, predatory judgment. You, he whispered, stumbling back a step. You are not Valerie. Not. He lunged across the room, crashing into the coffee table, sending books flying, but regaining his balance with surprising speed. He grabbed my shoulders, his fingers digging into my flesh with bruising force. He stared into my face, searching for the woman he had broken, and finding only a stranger who was ready to break him. "Who are you?" he screamed, shaking me. "Where is my wife? Who are you?" Gavin's fingers dug into my shoulders like talons. I didn't panic. Panic gets you killed. I reacted. I brought my knee up, aimed directly at his midsection, but he twisted at the last second, taking the blow on his hip. He grunted in pain but didn't let go. He was stronger than I anticipated, fueled by a desperate, frantic energy that overrode his drunkenness. I tried to gouge his eyes, a trick a U.S. Marshal taught me, but he caught my wrist, his grip crushing. "You think you can come into my house and play games with me?" He screamed, his spittle hitting my face. I twisted, attempting to break his hold, but he slammed me backward. My head connected with the corner of the heavy oak desk. A starburst of white light exploded behind my eyes. My knees buckled. I felt myself sliding down toward the Persian rug, the room spinning wildly out of control. I tried to stay conscious, tried to reach for the recorder in my pocket, but my limbs felt like lead. Through the ringing in my ears, I heard him panting, standing over me. "You want to play the crazy wife," he spat. "Fine. I will treat you like one." He grabbed me by the collar of Valerie's cheap blouse and dragged me across the floor. I tried to dig my heels in, but I was too weak. He hauled me out of the library and down the hall toward the kitchen. He kicked open the heavy door to the wine cellar. I tumbled down the first few wooden steps, hitting my shoulder hard against the railing before rolling to the concrete floor at the bottom. Darkness swallowed me. I lay there gasping for air, trying to clear the fog in my brain. Above me, Gavin stood in the rectangle of light from the kitchen. He looked like a demon, his silhouette framed by the hallway glow. "You stay there," he growled. "You stay there and rot. Tomorrow night is the charity gala. All of Atlanta's finest will be right here in this house. And I am going to bring you up there, drooling and screaming, and show them exactly how far gone you are. I will have you committed by midnight, and by Monday this house and that land will be mine." The heavy door slammed shut. The sound echoed like a gunshot in a tomb. Then I heard the distinct click of the deadbolt sliding home. I don't know how long I lay on the cold stone floor. Minutes. Hours. When I finally pushed myself up, a wave of nausea rolled over me. My head throbbed in time with my heartbeat. I reached up and touched the back of my scalp. My fingers came away sticky with blood. I blinked, trying to adjust my eyes, but it was pitch black. Absolute, suffocating darkness. I fumbled around me, my hands brushing against dusty wine bottles and wooden crates. I needed to think. I needed a plan. But as I sat there trying to steady my breathing, I realized something was wrong. The air. It was heavy, thick, stagnant. Usually wine cellars have a low hum, the climate control system keeping the expensive vintage at the perfect temperature. But there was no hum. There was only silence. I crawled toward where I remembered the ventilation grate being. I reached up, feeling for the flow of cool air. Nothing. Gavin hadn't just locked me in. He had killed the climate control. He had shut off the ventilation. I took a breath and it felt shallow. The air was getting thin. He wasn't just hiding me for the party. He was hoping I wouldn't have enough oxygen to make a scene. Or maybe he was hoping I wouldn't have enough oxygen to survive at all. The darkness felt heavy, pressing against my chest like a physical weight. My lungs burned with every shallow breath. The air in the wine cellar was stale, recycling my own carbon dioxide. I tried to focus on the rhythmic blinking of the recorder in my pocket, but even that small red light seemed to be fading, blurring into the blackness. I closed my eyes, drifting. It would be so easy to just sleep, to let the darkness take over. Suddenly, a voice cut through the static in my earpiece, sharp and panicked. "Mom, Mom, your heart rate is dropping. Oxygen saturation is at 88%. He shut down the HVAC manually. "You are suffocating." It was Marcus, my boy. He sounded terrified. I tried to answer to tell him I was fine, but my throat was too dry, my tongue too heavy. I could only manage a weak cough. "Hold on," Marcus said, his fingers flying across a keyboard somewhere in the safety of my penthouse. "I am bypassing the firewall. This idiot bought a smart home system but kept the default admin password. Rookie mistake. Accessing climate control now. Overriding manual shutoff." A second later, a low hum vibrated through the floor. Then a mechanical whirring sound above me. A blast of cool, fresh air hit my face from the ventilation grate. I gasped, dragging the oxygen into my lungs. It tasted sweet. It tasted like life. "I am not done," Marcus said, his voice tight with focus. "I am disabling the electronic lock on the cellar door. 3, 2, 1. A loud clack echoed through the small space. The heavy door popped open just an inch, a slice of light from the kitchen, spilling onto the concrete floor. "Go, Mom," Marcus urged. "The door is open. The perimeter sensors are down. Run. Get out of there before he comes back." I pushed myself up to my knees, leaning against a crate of vintage Bordeaux to steady myself. I looked at that sliver of light. It was an escape route. I could crawl out, run to the car, drive back to my safe, secure life, and send the police to pick up Gavin. It would be sensible. It would be safe. But then I thought about Valerie. I thought about her swollen eye, her split lip, the way she flinched when someone moved too fast. I thought about Gavin upstairs right now, probably fixing himself a drink, thinking he had won, thinking he had crushed us. If I ran, he would just spin another lie. He would say I broke out, that I was dangerous. He would play the victim. No, running was for prey. I was not prey. I reached for the burner phone in my pocket. My hands were steady now, the oxygen clearing the fog from my brain. "Mom, what are you doing?" Marcus asked, his voice rising in panic. "Why aren't you moving? Get out of there." I brought the phone to my lips. "No, Marcus." "What do you mean, no? He tried to kill you." "Exactly," I said, my voice raspy but cold as ice. "And if I leave now, he gets to control the narrative. He gets to tell those people upstairs whatever he wants. I am not going to let him do that." I stood up, brushing the dust from Valerie's cheap skirt. I walked to the door and pushed it shut until the latch clicked again. "Mom," Marcus shouted, "did you just close the door?" "Listen to me carefully, son," I said, staring into the darkness, where I knew he was listening. "I am not escaping. I am preparing. I need you to come here. But do not come alone, and do not come empty-handed. I need 3 things. Go to my safe. Get the red Valentino gown, the one I wore to the governor's ball. Get the diamond necklace and the matching earrings. And Marcus, get the file, the one labeled loan acquisition. But Mom, the party starts in 2 hours. I know, I said, a smile spreading across my face in the dark. That is plenty of time. Gavin wants to put on a show for his high society friends. He wants to show them his crazy wife. Well, I am going to give him a show, but it is not going to be the one he expects. Bring me my war paint, Marcus. Tonight I am not just taking back my sister's life, I am taking everything. The floorboards above my head creaked with the weight of 100 lies. I could hear the muffled sounds of the catering crew setting up in the grand foyer. Glass clinking against silver. The hum of polite conversation starting to trickle in like a rising tide. Gavin was up there playing the role of his life. I imagined him adjusting his silk tie in the hallway mirror, practicing his sad, concerned husband face. He would be greeting the sharks of Atlanta real estate, shaking hands and whispering about his tragic situation. My poor Valerie, he would say, shaking his head with practiced sorrow. She has lost touch with reality completely. It is so hard watching the woman you love fade away, but I have to do what is best for her safety. He was setting the stage for my public execution, preparing to parade a broken, confused woman in front of the city elite to justify locking her away and seizing her millions. Down in the dark, I was getting ready for a different kind of performance. Marcus had slipped through the service entrance, silent as a shadow. He handed me the garment bag and the heavy velvet jewelry box. I stripped off the polyester rags Gavin forced my sister to wear. I let them drop to the dusty concrete floor where they belonged. I stepped into the red Valentino gown. The silk slid over my skin like liquid courage, fitting my frame perfectly. I fastened the diamond necklace around my throat. The stones were cold and heavy against my skin, sharp enough to cut glass. In the dim light of my burner phone screen, I applied my lipstick. Ruby Woo, my war paint. When I was done, I didn't look like a victim anymore. I looked like a verdict. Marcus checked his watch. "It is time, Mom. Gavin is about to make his speech. He is going to call for you in 5 minutes." I nodded, adjusting the diamond drop earrings. "Let him call. I want him to think he has won." The service door creaked open again. Marcus stepped back into the shadows, motioning for someone to enter. A figure walked in. She was wearing a simple white dress, moving slowly, but her head was held high. It was Valerie, my sister, the real Valerie. She looked better. The swelling in her eye had gone down, though the bruise was still a dark, angry smudge against her skin. But something in her posture had changed. Seeing her house, seeing the prison she had escaped, she didn't look scared anymore. She looked angry. She looked like a survivor. I walked toward her, the red silk rustling softly in the quiet cellar. We stood face to face in the gloom. 2 identical faces. One dressed for a gala, one dressed for redemption. It was like looking in a mirror that showed who you used to be and who you had to become. I reached out and took her hands. They were cold, but steady. "You ready to take your house back?" I whispered. Valerie looked up at the ceiling where the sound of a string quartet and laughter drifted down. She squeezed my hands hard. "I am ready, Vivian. I am done being afraid of him." I smiled, feeling a fierce pride swell in my chest. "Good, because we are about to give your husband the surprise of his miserable life." I smoothed her hair and looked her dead in the eye. "It is time to take back your dignity, sister. Let's go start the show." The gala was in full swing. From my position just behind the heavy velvet curtains of the service entrance, I could hear the clink of crystal and the murmur of Atlanta's elite. They were drinking Gavin's champagne, eating his caviar, and listening to his lies. I signaled Marcus. He cut the lights in the main hall for a split second, plunging the room into a dramatic hush before a single spotlight illuminated the grand staircase. Gavin stood at the bottom holding a microphone, looking for all the world like a tragic hero. He cleared his throat, silencing the crowd. "Thank you all for coming tonight," he began, his voice thick with practiced emotion. "As many of you know, this charity is very close to my heart. But tonight is also a difficult night for me. My wife, Valerie—" He paused, wiping a non-existent tear. "My poor Valerie has been struggling. Her mind is not what it used to be. It breaks my heart to see her like this, confused and fragile. But I promise to care for her no matter what." He gestured toward the top of the stairs where he expected his broken wife to be dragged out by the nurse he had hired. "I wanted you all to see her tonight to understand why I must make the difficult decision to seek professional care for her. Valerie, darling, please come out." The room held its breath. Gavin looked up expectantly, his face a mask of sorrow that hid his triumphant smirk. He was waiting for a ghost. He was waiting for a victim. Instead, the double doors at the top of the landing swung open with a resounding crash. I stepped into the halo of the spotlight. I was not wearing rags. I was not trembling. I was draped in crimson silk that flowed around me like liquid fire. The Valentino gown clung to my body, screaming power and money. At my throat, the diamond necklace caught the light, sending prisms of blinding white fire dancing across the shocked faces of the crowd below. I did not walk. I glided. My heels clicked a steady rhythm of judgment on the marble steps. Click, click, click. Every step was a sentence, every movement a gavel strike. The silence in the room was absolute. You could hear a pin drop. You could hear Gavin's heart stop. His jaw literally dropped, his eyes bulging, as he stared at the woman he thought he had broken, the woman he thought he had locked in a dark hole to rot. He wasn't looking at a mental patient. He was looking at a queen coming to claim her throne. I reached the middle of the staircase and stopped looking down at him like he was a bug I was about to crush. I slowly raised my hand, adjusting the diamond cuff on my wrist, letting the jewels flash one more time. The gasps from the audience rippled through the room like a wave. Gavin took a stumble back, his microphone dropping to his side with a thud. "Valerie?" he whispered, his voice amplified by the speaker trembling with genuine terror. I smiled. It was the smile of a predator who has just cornered its prey. "Hello, husband," I said, my voice projecting clear and strong without a microphone. "You wanted to show everyone your wife. Well, here I am." I walked down the final few steps until I was standing right in front of him. He looked like a statue frozen in a moment of absolute horror. I reached out and gently took the microphone from his limp hand. He didn't resist. He couldn't. His brain was trying to process how the broken woman he locked in a cellar was standing here dripping in diamonds. I turned to the crowd. The room was silent, the kind of silence that usually precedes a sentencing. I looked at the sea of expensive tuxedos and designer gowns. "My husband tells you I am losing my mind," I said, my voice smooth as silk but cutting like a knife. "He says I am unfit, that I am a danger to myself." I paused, letting the words hang in the air. Well, perhaps he is right, because only a truly crazy woman would do what I did this afternoon. I signaled to Marcus, who was standing near the DJ booth. He nodded. I reached into the small clutch purse I had carried down with me and pulled out a folded piece of thick, cream-colored paper. I unfolded it slowly, savoring the sound of the crisp paper crinkling in the microphone. "You see, Gavin has a little secret. He likes to gamble. But he is not very good at it. In fact, he is terrible. So terrible that he borrowed $500,000 from a very dangerous group of gentlemen in Chicago, gentlemen who do not appreciate late payments." Gavin's face went from pale to a sickly shade of gray. He recognized the paper. He knew exactly what it was. "They were going to kill him." I continued walking around him, circling him like a shark. "They were going to cut him into pieces. But I am a benevolent wife. I could not let that happen. So I made a call. I liquidated some assets, and I bought his debt. I held the paper up for the crowd to see. It was a promissory note, stamped paid in full, but transferred to a new holder. This is your marker, Gavin. Every cent you owed the mob you now owe to me. I own your debt. I own the lien on your car. I own the mortgage you tried to take out on my house. I own you." The crowd erupted into whispers. Shocked faces turned to Gavin, waiting for a denial, waiting for him to laugh it off. But he couldn't. He was shaking, staring at the document in my hand as if it were a burning coal. How he whispered. I leaned in close so only he could hear the steel in my voice before pulling back to address the room. "You see, ladies and gentlemen, my husband thought he was marrying a naive piano teacher with a nice inheritance. He thought he could bully her, beat her, and lock her away. He forgot one thing." Gavin suddenly snapped. The shock broke and the rage poured out. He lunged at me, grabbing my wrist, trying to tear the paper away. "You liar!" he screamed, his voice cracking with hysteria. "You are lying. This is a trick. You are just a piano teacher, a broke, pathetic piano teacher. You do not have $500,000. You do not have anything. Where did you get that money? Who are you, really?" "You are absolutely right, Gavin," I said, letting a cold laugh escape my lips. "Valerie does not have any money. She spent her entire inheritance trying to please a bottomless pit like you. She is broke. But I am not Valerie, and I have never been broke a day in my life." I looked up toward the massive double doors at the entrance of the ballroom. All eyes followed my gaze. The room went deathly quiet, the kind of silence that feels heavy like the air before a tornado touches down. I nodded once to Marcus, who was standing by the entrance. He pushed the doors open. They swung wide, revealing the night sky behind them. And there, standing in the frame like an avenging angel, was a woman in a simple, elegant white dress. Her head was held high, her shoulders back. The bruise on her face was covered with makeup. but the fire in her eyes was real. It was Valerie, the real Valerie. The sound that came out of Gavin was not human. It was a strangled gurgle of pure incomprehension. He whipped his head around, looking at me standing on the stairs in my red gown and diamonds, then looking back at the woman in the doorway in white. He looked back and forth, his eyes wide and frantic, his brain trying to process the impossible geometry of the moment. He was seeing double. He was seeing the woman he thought he had locked in a dungeon, standing 10 feet away from the woman who had just bought his life. Two identical faces, two identical glares of hatred. "No," Gavin whispered, stumbling backward. "No, that is not possible. You are in the cellar. I locked you in." He took another step back, his legs hitting a chair. He lost his balance and collapsed to the floor, landing hard on his expensive Italian suit. He crab-walked backward on his hands and heels, trying to get away from both of us, looking like a terrified crab. The guests gasped, shrinking away from him, leaving him isolated in a circle of judgment. I walked down the remaining steps, my heels clicking on the marble, closing the distance between us. Valerie walked forward from the door, meeting me in the center of the room. We stood side by side, a united front of identical fury. "Ladies and gentlemen," I said, my voice booming through the silent hall. "I apologize for the deception, but it was necessary to save a life." I pointed a manicured finger at the trembling man on the floor. "My name is Vivian Banks. I am a retired federal judge for the Northern District of Georgia, and this woman standing beside me is my twin sister, Valerie, the woman this man vowed to love and cherish, the woman he beat, starved, drugged, and locked in a wine cellar to die so he could pay off his gambling debts." I looked down at Gavin, my eyes burning with the fire of 1,000 suns. "You wanted to institutionalize her, Gavin. You wanted to make everyone believe she was crazy. But the only crazy thing here is that you thought you could hurt a Banks woman and get away with it. You did not just marry a piano teacher. You married into a dynasty, and you just declared war on the wrong sister." "You are delusional," Gavin spat, struggling to his feet, his face slick with sweat. "You are trying to frame me. None of these people believe you. I am a pillar of this community. I am a philanthropist. You are just two bitter old women making up stories." I shook my head slowly, a look of pity crossing my face. It was almost sad how desperate he was, how he clung to the shreds of his reputation, even as it burned around him. "You still do not get it, do you?" I said calmly. "You bugged the house to trap Valerie. You put cameras in the bedroom and microphones in the living room to catch her acting crazy. But you forgot one crucial rule of surveillance, Gavin. Technology does not take sides. It just records what is there." I raised my hand, signaling Marcus in the booth. "Show them, son." The massive projection screen behind the stage, which was supposed to display the charity's mission statement, flickered to life. The room went dark again, save for the eerie glow of the footage. It was high definition, crystal clear. The first clip showed Gavin in the kitchen mixing the blue powder into the orange juice. His face was twisted in a sneer as he muttered, "Die already, you useless hag." A collective gasp sucked the air out of the ballroom. The socialites, the business partners, the politicians, they all stared in horror as the man they had toasted minutes ago tried to poison his wife. The scene changed. It was the library from the night before. The audio boomed through the speakers, amplified for every ear to hear. "I never loved you. I hated waking up next to your wrinkly face. I need to sell your land to pay them back before they cut my fingers off." Gavin stood frozen, his eyes fixed on the screen, watching his own destruction broadcast in 4K resolution. He looked like a man watching his own autopsy. Then came the footage of Jessica. She was sitting on the sofa laughing about the power of attorney. "Just sign it, honey," she said on screen, her voice dripping with condescension. "We will take care of everything." In the ballroom, the real Jessica let out a strangled cry. She looked around, realizing every eye was on her. Her career, her reputation, her life was evaporating in real time. She bolted. She kicked off her heels and made a run for the service exit, shoving a waiter aside in her panic. She didn't make it 3 steps. The kitchen doors swung open, and 2 uniformed officers stepped out, blocking her path. "Not so fast, counselor," one of them said, grabbing her arm as she tried to spin away. You have the right to remain silent." The click of handcuffs echoed through the room, cutting through the murmurs of the crowd. I looked back at Gavin. He was shaking violently now, his face a mask of pure, unadulterated hatred. He looked at the screen where he was currently dragging me down the hall by my hair. Then he looked at the crowd, who were recoiling from him in disgust. And finally his eyes landed on Valerie, the real Valerie, the wife he had tormented. She was standing tall, looking at him not with fear, but with cold indifference. She had won. She had taken his power, his money, and his freedom. Something inside him snapped. It was visible, a physical break in his psyche. His eyes went wide and white, showing the animal underneath. He let out a roar, a sound of pure primal rage. He grabbed a silver fruit knife from the nearest banquet table, the blade glinting under the chandelier. "If I cannot have the money," he screamed, lunging forward, saliva flying from his mouth. "No one can. I will kill you." He charged straight for Valerie, the knife raised high, his intent clear. He was going to finish what he started right here in front of everyone. I did not wait for the police. They were good men, but they were 10 feet away, and Gavin was closing the distance fast. I had spent 20 years on the bench sending men like him away, but before that I grew up with 3 brothers in a neighborhood where you learned to handle yourself or you didn't survive. Gavin lunged the silver fruit knife aimed at my sister's heart. I didn't step back. I stepped in. I lifted my right foot, the 4-inch stiletto heel of my Louboutin, acting as a precision instrument. I brought it down with all my weight directly onto his wrist. There was a sickening crunch. Gavin screamed, dropping the knife as the bones in his hand gave way under the pressure. He doubled over, clutching his shattered wrist, but I wasn't done. While he was bent over gasping, I delivered a sharp, calculated kick straight to his groin. It wasn't elegant, it wasn't ladylike, but it was effective. Gavin collapsed to the marble floor, curling into a fetal position, wheezing in agony. The threat was neutralized. I smoothed the skirt of my red gown, looking down at him with nothing but disdain. Then movement caught my eye. It was Valerie. She walked toward him slowly. For a second I thought she might help him, might revert to the scared woman he had conditioned her to be. But when she stood over him, her shadow falling across his face, she looked like a statue of justice. Gavin looked up at her, tears streaming down his face from the pain. "Val, please," he wheezed, reaching out with his good hand. Valerie stared at him. Then she drew back her hand and slapped him. It was a sound like a gunshot echoing off the vaulted ceilings. It was the sound of a woman reclaiming her soul. That she said, her voice steady and cold, was for the last 3 years. The police chief finally broke through the stunned circle of onlookers. He hauled Gavin to his feet, forcing his arms behind his back. The handcuffs clicked shut, sealing his fate. "You are under arrest for attempted murder, conspiracy to commit fraud, and elder abuse." The chief recited, his voice booming. Gavin was sobbing now, broken and humiliated. As they began to drag him away, I stepped into his path one last time. I motioned for the officers to pause. They obliged out of respect for the judge, not the suspect. I leaned in close so my lips were inches from his ear. I wanted him to hear every syllable. "Do not worry about being lonely inside, Gavin," I whispered, my voice soft and terrifying. "I sat on the federal bench for 30 years. I sentenced half the population of the Georgia State Penitentiary. They remember me. And I'm going to make a few calls tonight to let them know a special friend of mine is coming to visit." I pulled back, watching the color drain from his face, leaving him looking like a corpse. "They are going to take very good care of you," I promised. It took exactly 30 days for the justice system to chew Gavin up and spit him out. I sat in the front row of the courtroom wearing a white suit that symbolized the purity of the truth, while Gavin wore a bright orange prison jumper that matched the rot in his soul. The judge did not hesitate. 25 years for attempted murder, fraud, and spousal abuse, without the possibility of parole for at least 15. Jessica, the disgraced lawyer, got 10 years and a lifetime ban from practicing law. When the bailiffs led Gavin away, he looked at me one last time, searching for some hint of mercy or perhaps regret. I did not smile. I did not gloat. I just checked my watch as if I had somewhere better to be. Because I did. As the primary holder of Gavin's debt, I exercised my legal right to seize his personal assets immediately. It was a liquidation sale of his ego. His Porsche went to auction. His collection of designer watches was sold for scrap gold. His custom Italian suits were donated to a program that helps ex-convicts find jobs. The irony was delicious. The proceeds did not go into my pocket. Every single cent went to a shelter for battered women in downtown Atlanta. I made sure the donation was made in his name. I wanted him to know that even from behind bars, he was finally being useful to the women he despised. Valerie did not spend another night in that house of horrors. We put the estate on the market the morning after the gala. It sold in 3 days to a nice young couple who promised to paint over the gray walls with bright colors. Valerie moved into my penthouse. We converted the guest wing into her sanctuary, complete with a Steinway grand piano by the window overlooking the city. For the first time in 3 years, I heard music in my home. It wasn't sad music anymore. It was jazz, lively, complex, and free. Now we sat on the terrace, the Atlanta skyline glittering before us like a bed of diamonds. The evening air was warm and smelled of jasmine. We clinked our glasses of vintage Pinot Noir, toasting to freedom. Valerie looked 10 years younger. The bruise on her eye was gone, replaced by the sparkle that Gavin had tried so hard to extinguish. We were 2 old women sitting on top of the world survivors of a war nobody else knew we were fighting. The sliding glass door opened, and Marcus stepped out holding a tablet. He looked serious, but satisfied the way he always did when he finished a complex code. He pulled up a chair between us. "Ladies," he said, tapping the screen, "I just finished the final installation. I have upgraded the penthouse's security grid. We now have biometric scanners on the elevators, reinforced steel shutters on the windows, and a direct silent alarm linked to the police chief's personal cell phone." He turned the tablet to show us a holographic map of the building glowing with protective blue lines. "No one gets in here unless we want them to," he said, his voice fierce and protective. "And if anyone tries to hurt either of you again, they will not make it past the lobby. This isn't just a home anymore. It is a fortress." I watched Marcus walk back inside the glass door sliding shut behind him. I took a sip of wine and looked out at the city lights. They looked different tonight, brighter, cleaner. For the first time in a long time, the air did not smell like fear. It smelled like victory. Gavin made the mistake so many men like him make. He looked at 2 68-year-old women and he saw prey. He saw gray hair and wrinkles, and he assumed we were weak. He assumed we were past our prime, invisible, easy to discard. He thought he could isolate us, break us down, and steal what our parents worked their fingers to the bone to build. But he forgot that gray hair is not a sign of weakness. It is a sign of survival. It means we have lived through storms he could not even imagine. It means we have fought battles and won wars while he was still learning to tie his expensive Italian shoes. He did not realize that when you back a woman into a corner, especially a black woman who has had to fight for every inch of ground she stands on, you do not get a victim, you get a warrior. We took back our dignity, we took back our legacy, and yes, we took his future. Some people might say I went too far. They might say that humiliating him in front of the entire city, stripping him of every dime, and ensuring he spends the rest of his life in a cage was cruel. They might say that as a judge I should have taken the high road, but I know the truth. Predators like Gavin do not stop because you ask them nicely. They do not stop because you show them mercy. They stop when you cut off their head. They stop when you make them the prey. I did not just do this for Valerie. I did it for every woman who has ever been told she is too old, too weak, or too crazy to matter. I looked back inside. Valerie was sitting at the piano, her fingers moving softly over the keys. She wasn't playing a sad song anymore. She was playing something fast, something with a rhythm that made you want to stand up and fight. She caught my eye and smiled, raising her glass. We survived, we thrived, and we are just getting started. The most dangerous mistake a predator like Gavin can make is assuming that kindness is weakness and that age is a liability. My story isn't just about revenge. It is a testament to the invisible strength that women carry, especially those of us who have weathered decades of life's storms. Gavin looked at gray hair and saw frailty, but he failed to recognize that survival is a skill honed over a lifetime. We taught him that silence is not consent. It is often just the quiet before the strike. Furthermore, this journey proves that isolation is an abuser's greatest weapon. As long as Valerie was alone, she was vulnerable. But the moment we stood together, the power dynamic shifted. Family isn't just about blood. It is about being the shield for those who cannot defend themselves. We learned that justice doesn't always come from a gavel. Sometimes it comes from a well-timed plan and the absolute refusal to be a victim. Never let anyone convince you that you are too old, too weak, or too broken to fight back. Do you believe justice was truly served, or did I cross the line into cruelty? Tell me your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to like and subscribe to the Never Too Old channel for more stories about how we take back our power.